Summers, Marty Martindale for educ.com. Marty, there's just no way of sugarcoating this. This was a butt stomping today. Oregon fell to Arizona 42 to
16.
16. And, at some point, you just lose track of what the score is. Oregon just didn't have a chance of winning this game. Maybe in the second half, they could have.
They couldn't get the momentum.
They couldn't get the momentum. They could not finish drives. Offensively, they did fairly well, but there were just instances where they just didn't finish drives and didn't score.
Every time they started to start moving the ball, and they had a lot of yards. Oregon finished with about 500 yards. Marcus threw for 308, I think, and about 200 yards rushing. But they couldn't score. They kept fizzling out. There'd be a turnover, or a fumble, or something would go wrong. And they just couldn't get in that rhythm that's so important to the offense.
By the way, speaking of Marcus Mariota, he said in post-game he was asked about that hit that he took on his second interception of the day, where he drove the defender that intercepted the ball out of bounds and looked like he got hit in the head, and he was wobbly coming off the field. He's not sure if he has a concussion. He's not really sure what is going on, but in terms of at least talking to us in post-game, he was not real happy about the outcome, obviously, but he seemed normal in every other sense.
He seemed like he was okay. I think mostly he was disappointed. He made it very clear he's never lost a game like this in his football career. That Oregon got out of sync from the get-go with that unusual interception, first play of the game, and they never got in a rhythm. Marcus was helped off the field after that tackle. He probably has a mild concussion. He said he needed to talk to the trainers about it. But I really thought that he was expressing more frustration than concern about being injured. He did run the ball well. He didn't seem to be favoring his knee. He rushed for 55 yards, and I thought he looked pretty good doing it. Unfortunately, the Arizona quarterback rushed for 105 yards.
Speaking of DJ Danker running for 105 or 100, I think he had 105 of total yards, had 102 of net yards. But the real story was Kadeem Carey. He was just a monster with over 200 yards rushing today.
He's the real deal. And like Nick Galeotti said, Arizona was clearly the best team today. And I also thought that Arizona's offensive line was really handling Oregon's defensive line and creating the holes. What was happening was on first down, Carey was getting 5 yards and every time he touched the ball, and then it opened up the whole offense where they could take their pick.
Well, we asked Coach Aliotti after the game when he was talking about that they lost it at the line of scrimmage, and so I asked him to elaborate what he meant by that, and of course then he pointed out, when they go on first down and pick up 5 or 7 yards, that was just really tough for them to overcome. I also asked both Coach Helfrich and Coach or some of the other players. I asked Marcus, I think. If there was a remnant of what happened against Stanford, and Coach Helfrich didn't think that that this was a different opponent, different game, but certainly there are a lot of similarities. What happened against Stanford, what happened against Arizona today?
Well, physically, in both games, they were handled in the trenches. There's just no question about it. Coach Helfrich also said that the team was a little flat this week. He said they had a bad practice on Friday. He thought he corrected that with some meetings after that practice, but apparently not. And it didn't seem like Oregon's defense was wrapping up very well. It seemed like they were a little out of position. The defensive backs were even missing coverages, which is really unusual because Oregon's strength on their defense is their DBs. And they were all out of sync.
Well, I think this goes back to, we don't really get to see the Ducks until they play a game. And so, what we saw today, if there were surprises or there was bad practice, nobody would have known about it because, media wasn't there to watch practice. On Fridays, they wouldn't have been there anyway, but so.
Right. Well, and Oregon, the coaches pointed out, Oregon gets every other team's best effort. If you beat Oregon, you rush the field. It's a big deal to beat Oregon these days. And whereas Oregon's kind of used to winning, and occasionally they come out a little bit flat.
Well, now they're no doubt they have been eliminated from any possible trip to the Rose Bowl. Certainly aren't going to be playing in the Pac-12 championship game, so it remains to be seen, depending on how they do against Oregon State, if what bowl they go to. So now the Ducks are not in that position where they're the hunted. Obviously, this a rivalry game is going to be a little bit different, but so it's going to be interesting to watch what happens this spring and into next.
Yeah, and one thing we should point out too. A lot of the reporters asked about the Rose Bowl comment some of the players made this last week, like DeAnthony Thomas. They thought that, first of all, Coach Helfrich said that those comments were taken out of context and they had no impact on the game whatsoever. Also remember, if Oregon beats Oregon State, they'll still win 10. That would be 10 victories in the regular season. Probably the best they can hope for would probably be the Alamo Bowl, I think. I'd have to look at everything, but that's what I'm thinking. And 10 years ago, that would have been a good season. But, Oregon's gotten a lot better than that.
Well, 10 years ago is then, and now is, I guess, it is sort of a disappointing outcome for the fans, even though it's only 2 losses. But today was, not the type of loss you'd expect an Oregon team to suffer.
This was a bad day. In fact, there were some comments about this game reminding a lot of people of the Las Vegas Bowl against BYU, when Oregon basically didn't show up and didn't play very well, and it was that kind of frustration, I think.
Well, that's what we have for now, and so until next week, next Friday night, I should say, the day after Thanksgiving, when the Ducks take on Oregon State in the Civil War at Autzen Stadium. This is Steve Summers with Marty Martindale for educ.com.